The lilac sky of Kafera 12 stretched endlessly above, its twin suns beating down mercilessly on the terrain below. Cadet Rhea Miller squinted upward, adjusting the environmental sensors on her standard-issue field suit. The atmosphere readings confirmed what the mission brief had stated: breathable, but laced with trace toxins that would accumulate over time. Their 5-day survival exercise would push the limits of their training. But that's precisely what final-year cadets at the Galactic Academy were expected to handle. "Listen up, cadets!" Commander Harrell's voice cut through the murmurs of the 10-person team. The tall Andorian's blue skin seemed to shimmer under the alien sunlight as she paced before them. "This is your final field assessment before graduation. Kafera 12 is a Class C wilderness planet, hostile but survivable. Your objective is simple: survive 5 days with minimal technological assistance." Rhea shifted her weight, feeling the reassuring pressure of her survival knife against her thigh. Unlike her fellow cadets, many of whom came from technologically advanced worlds, she had grown up in the reclaimed wilderness zones of Earth, where traditional survival skills were still taught and valued. Her specialty in primitive survival techniques had earned her both respect and ridicule throughout her academy years. Commander Harrell continued, "You each have your standard-issue emergency beacon, which is to be used only in life-threatening situations. Using it for any other reason results in automatic failure." Her stern gaze swept across the assembled cadets. "The dropship returns in exactly 5 days, 16 hours. Your performance here accounts for 40% of your final evaluation." The commander activated a holographic display showing a topographical map of their surroundings. "You must find water, shelter, and sustenance. Work together or separately, I don't care. Just survive." With a flick of her wrist, the display vanished. "One last thing. Your suit's emergency medical pod can be deployed only once. Use it wisely." Rhea glanced around at her fellow cadets. Riser, the tall Centaurian with his characteristic silver-tinted skin, was already scanning the horizon with his enhanced optical implants. Silith, the reptilian Draxian, flicked her tongue to taste the air, her scales adjusting to match the reddish soil beneath their feet. The others, Omar, Frel, Humea, Jinx, Tala, Zev, and Naomi, represented a cross-section of the Galactic Alliance's diverse species and worlds. "Final instruction," Commander Harrell announced, her voice cutting through Rhea's observations. "You must secure your own drinking water or fail the assessment. The indigenous water sources contain heavy metals and unknown microorganisms. Figure it out, cadets." With that, she strode back to the shuttle, which lifted off moments later, leaving them alone on the alien landscape. Riser immediately took charge, his tall frame dominating the group. "First priority, water source location. Jinx, deploy your terrain scanner. Silith, use your chemoreceptors to detect moisture. The rest of you, unpack the basic equipment." Rhea said nothing as she surveyed their surroundings. While the others busied themselves with technology, she knelt to examine the soil, feeling its texture between her fingers. Dry, but not completely devoid of moisture. The twin suns would make water conservation critical. Within 2 hours, they had located a stream approximately 3 kilometers from their landing site. The group moved efficiently, setting up a preliminary camp near the water source. Rhea observed how the others immediately turned to their tech. Riser had already deployed his portable molecular analyzer to test the water. "Heavy metal content exceeds safety parameters by 300%, he announced, frowning at the readout. "And there are microbial forms not in our database." Silith hissed softly. "My filtration implant can handle the metals, but not unknown biologicals." "Same issue with my purifier," Zev added, the Arcturian's bioluminescent markings pulsing with concern. Omar, the only other human in the group besides Rhea and Naomi, activated his water treatment module. "I can program this to target the largest contaminants, but it'll take time to calibrate for complete purification. Rhea listened quietly, mentally cataloging their approaches. All of them relied on technology, sophisticated, but vulnerable to failure. She began to wander along the stream bank, gathering materials, various sizes of rocks, fine sand, charcoal from what appeared to be a lightning-struck tree, and broad leaves from native plants. "What are you doing, Miller?" Reiser called out, a hint of condescension in his voice. "Gathering souvenirs?" "Building a water filter," she replied simply, not looking up from her collection. Silith's laugh was a dry rasp. "With rocks and dirt? This isn't wilderness camp, Terran." "This is exactly wilderness camp," Rhea countered calmly. "That's the whole point of the exercise." Reiser shook his head. "While you play with pebbles, I'll calibrate my nanofilter to handle these contaminants. It should be operational within 3 hours." Rhea shrugged and continued her work, moving slightly away from the group. She found a fallen hollow log and began to transform it into a filtration system, layering materials inside, coarse rocks at the bottom, then smaller pebbles, then sand, then crushed charcoal, and finally, a mesh of fibrous plant material at the top. It was a design humans had used for thousands of years, simple but effective for removing most contaminants. As the day progressed, the technological approaches began to falter. Omar's water treatment module overheated in the intense dual sunlight. Reiser's nanofilter kept jamming with the unfamiliar sediment. Silith's implant registered an error when processing the alien microbes. One by one, their high-tech solutions encountered problems they hadn't anticipated. By evening, tensions were rising. No one had yet produced safe drinking water, and the twin suns had taken their toll. Dehydration was becoming a concern. "This is ridiculous," Jinx muttered, the Phobian's normally blue skin turning a worried purple. "We should have conquered this primitive challenge hours ago." Tala, whose homeworld was mostly water, seemed particularly distressed. "My condensation trap shattered when the temperature dropped too quickly after sunset. The thermal gradient was more severe than I calculated." Rhea continued working silently, allowing the first test batch of water to slowly drip through her makeshift filter. She knew it wouldn't remove all contaminants, especially dissolved metals, but combined with boiling, it would be safer than nothing. As night fell, the group set up portable shelters. The mood was somber. Their sophisticated equipment, designed for interstellar travel and alien environments, was failing them on this simple task. "Anyone make progress on the water situation?" Humea asked, their bioluminescent antennae dimming with concern. A chorus of negative responses followed. "Miller's still playing with her dirt pile," Reiser said with a dismissive wave. "I'm reconfiguring my molecular separator to handle the indigenous sediment. Should be functional by morning." Rhea said nothing, but continued monitoring her filter as it slowly processed the stream water. By morning, she would boil the filtered water using solar reflection, another ancient technique. The night passed uncomfortably. By dawn, 2 cadets, Jinx and Tala, were showing signs of dehydration. Their respective physiologies were particularly vulnerable to water loss. Despite the team's technical expertise, they had yet to produce a single drop of safe drinking water. Rhea woke before the others and checked her filter. The water that had passed through looked clearer, though not completely pure. She collected it in a metal container and positioned it to catch the first rays of the rising suns, using a polished piece of equipment as a reflector to intensify the heat. Within an hour, the water was boiling. Omar was the first to notice her activity. The dark-skinned human approached cautiously, watching as she carefully set the boiled water aside to cool. "Is that actually going to be drinkable?" he asked, skepticism evident in his voice. Rhea nodded. "Not perfect, but safer than nothing. The filtration removes most particulates and some contaminants. Boiling kills microorganisms. It's how humans purified water for thousands of years before we had technology." Omar glanced back at the others, who were once again attempting to repair or recalibrate their devices. They won't take you seriously. I don't need them to take me seriously, Rhea replied. I just need to complete the mission. As the second day progressed, the situation grew more dire. Jinx activated their emergency medical pod, their dehydration reaching critical levels. The pod stabilized them, but now they had lost their safety net. Tala was looking increasingly unwell, her aquatic adapted physiology suffering severely from moisture loss. The technological approaches continued to fail. Riser's molecular separator overloaded when attempting to process the alien metals. Silith's biofiltration system produced water that caused immediate allergic reactions. Zev's solar condenser generated barely a few drops, insufficient for survival. By midday, Rhea had produced nearly a liter of filtered, boiled water. She had consumed only a small amount herself, wanting to be certain of its safety before offering it to others. When no adverse effects manifested after several hours, she felt confident enough to expand her operation. Humea was the first to break. The normally proud Vegan approached Rhea's filtration setup with obvious reluctance. Miller, they began, antennae twitching uncomfortably. Your apparatus, has it produced potable water? Rhea nodded, not showing any satisfaction at the question. I've had no ill effects so far. It's not perfect, but it's better than dehydration. Humea hesitated, then asked, May I observe your process? Better yet, you can help, Rhea replied, handing them a container. We need more filtration material. The charcoal is particularly important. It absorbs many toxins. By the afternoon of the second day, Omar and Humea were openly working with Rhea. They had expanded the filtration system, creating multiple units using hollow logs and containers fashioned from equipment casings. The others watched with a mixture of skepticism and growing desperation. Tala finally activated her medical pod as well, leaving 8 cadets without emergency backup. The reality of their situation was becoming clear. Their advanced technology was failing them in this environment, while Rhea's primitive methods were slowly but steadily producing results. Riser maintained his distance, still working furiously on his molecular separator. This is temporary, he insisted to anyone who would listen. Once I bypass the overload sensors, my system will produce perfectly pure water in seconds. Silith, however, had begun to reconsider. The reptilian cadet observed Rhea's operation with calculating eyes. Explain the charcoal component, she demanded, approaching the filtration station. Activated carbon, Rhea explained. The burning process creates millions of tiny pores that trap contaminants. It's especially good for organic compounds and some metals. Primitive adsorption technology. Silith translated into her own technical framework. After a moment's consideration, she added, I could enhance this with thermal absorption crystals from my equipment. They would pre-treat the water before filtration. Rhea nodded. Any improvement would help. By the end of the second day, 6 of the cadets were working together on the expanded filtration system. Only Riser, Naomi, and Zev maintained their commitment to technological solutions, though their confidence was visibly waning. The third morning brought a critical moment. Riser, despite his pride, was showing signs of dehydration. His silver skin had dulled, and his movements were becoming sluggish. Still, he refused to acknowledge the success of Rhea's primitive method. Frel, who had been quietly observing the entire situation, finally approached Riser. The Terran's filter is working, he said simply. Your separator is not. This is not about technological superiority. It's about survival. Riser's expression hardened. My system is superior in every way. It's just incompatible with these specific conditions. Which makes it inferior in these specific conditions, Frel countered logically. The purpose of technology is to solve problems, not to be admired for its complexity. The confrontation drew the attention of the others. Rhea approached, carrying a cup of filtered, boiled water. Without a word, she offered it to Riser. The moment hung in the air. Everyone understood its significance. Riser, the technically brilliant, augmented Centaurian who had consistently dismissed Rhea's primitive methods, was being offered salvation by the very approach he had ridiculed. Pride warred with necessity on his face. Finally, thirst won. He took the cup and examined the water suspiciously. "Your filtration can't possibly remove all contaminants." "It doesn't," Rhea acknowledged honestly. "But it removes enough to keep us alive until rescue. That's the mission." Riser hesitated, then drank. The group watched in tense silence, aware that if Rhea's method failed, they would lose one of their strongest members. Minutes passed. Riser showed no immediate negative reaction. The filtered water, while not perfectly pure, was indeed safe enough for consumption. The psychological barrier broken, the remaining holdouts joined the filtration effort. Zev contributed his knowledge of solar positioning to maximize the boiling efficiency. Naomi, with her background in xenobotany, identified additional plant materials that could enhance the filtration process. Even Riser, once recovered, applied his analytical skills to optimize the layering of materials. By the fourth day, they had established a proper water treatment station, using thermal absorption crystals from Silith's equipment as a pre-treatment, multiple filtration units processing simultaneously, and a solar boiling array designed by Zev. They were producing enough safe water for the entire team. The mood in the camp transformed, from competition and dismissal. They had moved to cooperation and mutual respect. Rhea, once mocked for her outdated skills, now found herself in the position of teacher, showing the others how to identify the best materials and construct the most effective filters. "I still don't understand why this wasn't in our standard training," Naomi commented, as she helped Rhea construct another filtration unit. "We spend years learning to operate and repair complex systems, but not how to create basic ones from natural materials." "Different worlds, different priorities," Rhea replied. "On Earth, especially in the reclaimed zones, we maintain these skills because technology can fail. Many other worlds have never experienced that kind of technological regression." "An oversight in our training program," Riser acknowledged. Having overheard the conversation, his tone had lost its condescension. "Especially for survival specialists. Redundancy is a fundamental engineering principle. Having analog backups for digital systems. We should apply the same thinking to survival techniques." The fifth day dawned with a new challenge. One of the twin suns appeared brighter, emitting increased radiation that their sensors detected immediately. This environmental shift threatened to degrade their filtration materials more quickly and potentially introduce new contaminants into the water supply. "The increased solar radiation will accelerate bacterial growth in the stream," Silith observed, her scales shifting color with concern. "Our current filtration may become inadequate." Rhea considered the problem. "We need to add another layer to the process, something to deal specifically with the increased biological contaminants." Naomi stepped forward. "Some of the local plant life contains natural antibacterial compounds. I've been analyzing them for potential food sources, but they could be adapted for water purification." Together, they modified their filtration system, incorporating the antibacterial plants identified by Naomi. Riser contributed by developing a solar shade that reduced direct radiation exposure to their water collection points. Zev recalibrated the boiling schedule to ensure all water reached sterilization temperature for longer periods. By midday, they had adjusted their water treatment process to account for the changing conditions. What had begun as Rhea's solo project had evolved into a true team effort, combining primitive techniques with advanced knowledge. As they gathered for the evening meal, consisting of local edible plants identified by Naomi and small protein rations from their supplies. Frel raised an interesting point. "Our initial failure is revealing," the thoughtful cadet observed. "We were all trained to rely on specialized equipment, but not trained to think beyond it. Except Miller. On my homeworld, technology is relatively new to us," Rhea explained. "We lost much of it during the climate wars. For generations, we survived using methods like these. When technology returned, we kept the old knowledge alongside the new." "A wise approach," Humea acknowledged. "My people have always valued technological advancement above all else. But this experience has shown me the vulnerability in that single-minded focus." Reiser, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. "I owe you an apology, Miller. I dismissed your methods because they seemed beneath our training level. I was wrong." Rhea shook her head. "It's not about which method is superior. It's about using the right tool for the situation. Sometimes that's a molecular separator. Sometimes it's rocks, sand, and charcoal." On the morning of the 6th day, their sensors detected the approach of the retrieval shuttle. As they packed up their camp, there was none of the competitive tension that had marked their arrival. Instead, a quiet camaraderie had formed, the kind that comes from facing a challenge together and overcoming it through cooperation. Commander Harrell exited the shuttle, her expression giving away nothing as she inspected their camp. "Status report, cadets." Reiser, as the unofficial leader of the group, stepped forward. "Mission accomplished, Commander. All cadets present and accounted for. 2 emergency medical pods deployed for dehydration treatment during the initial phase, but all vital signs currently nominal." The commander's antennae twitched slightly, the Andorian equivalent of raised eyebrows. "Interesting. And your water situation?" "We established a sustainable purification system using primarily natural filtration methods, supplemented by adapted technology," Reiser reported, gesturing toward their water treatment station. Cadet Miller's expertise in primitive survival techniques proved invaluable. Commander Harrell turned to Rhea. "Explain your methodology, Cadet." Rhea described the multi-stage filtration system they had developed, from the initial simple filter to the integrated approach that combined natural materials with technological enhancements. The commander listened intently, then nodded. "A practical application of the survival fundamentals principle. Use what's available, adapt what you have, overcome what you lack." She surveyed the group. "And the team dynamic?" There was a moment of awkward silence before Omar spoke up. "We had differing approaches initially, Commander. There was resistance to Cadet Miller's methods until they proved effective." "Resistance is a diplomatic term for it," Silith added, her honesty characteristic of her species. "Many of us dismissed her techniques as obsolete and inefficient. And yet here you stand, hydrated and alive," Commander Harrell observed dryly. "An important lesson, cadets. Advanced technology is a tool, not a solution. When the tool fails, the solution must come from here." She tapped her temple. "Not from your equipment." As they boarded the shuttle, Rhea found herself seated next to Reiser. The Centaurian studied her with newfound respect. "Your filtration design," he said quietly. "With some modifications. It could be standardized for emergency kits. A backup system when technology fails." Rhea nodded. "That's how we should think of it. Not as primitive or advanced, but as complementary approaches." "I'd like to collaborate on developing that standard," Reiser continued. "With your practical knowledge and my engineering background, we could create something truly resilient." "I'd welcome that," Rhea replied, surprised but pleased by the offer. As the shuttle lifted off from Kafera 12, leaving the lilac sky and twin suns behind, Rhea reflected on the experience. What had begun as a test of survival skills had become something more significant, a bridge between different approaches to problem solving, between tradition and innovation. Back at the Galactic Academy, their 5-day ordeal became something of a case study. Commander Harrell used their experience to institute a new training module focused on non-technological survival methods. To Rhea's surprise, she was asked to help develop the curriculum, working alongside some of the Academy's most respected survival instructors. The system they had developed on Kafera 12, now formally documented as the Miller Passive Filtration Protocol, was incorporated into the standard field manual for all cadets. It emphasized the integration of natural filtration principles with technological enhancements, creating a resilient system that could function across a wide range of environments. 3 months later, at the graduation ceremony, Rhea stood alongside her fellow cadets as they prepared to receive their commissions. The Academy Commandant addressed the assembled graduates, focusing particularly on adaptability and resourcefulness as core values of the Galactic Service. "Your training has equipped you with cutting-edge knowledge and technology," the Commandant stated, her voice carrying across the Grand Hall. "But, as this year's Kafera 12 exercise demonstrated so effectively, your most valuable asset remains your ability to think beyond your equipment, to find solutions where none seem to exist." Rhea felt a subtle nudge from Omar, standing beside her. "They're talking about you without naming you," he whispered, classic Commandant style. After the ceremony, as the newly commissioned officers celebrated their achievement, Reiser approached Rhea with a small package. "A graduation gift," he explained, handing it to her. "Open it." Inside was a miniature version of their water filtration system, expertly crafted and mounted as a display piece. A small plaque at the base read, "Sometimes the simplest solution is the most elegant. Thank you for the lesson in humility, Reiser." Rhea smiled, genuinely touched by the gesture. "I didn't expect this." "None of us expected any of it," Reiser replied, with a self-deprecating laugh. "That was rather the point, wasn't it? By the way, I've been assigned to the research vessel Horizon for my first posting. They're exploring potential colony worlds in the Cygnus sector. My recommendations included your name for the survival specialist position." Rhea's eyes widened. "The Horizon? That's one of the most prestigious assignments in the fleet." "They need someone who can think beyond technology," Reiser said simply. "Someone who sees solutions others miss. I can't think of anyone better qualified." In the weeks that followed, Rhea indeed received the assignment to the Horizon. As she packed her belongings, she made sure to include both her advanced equipment and a small collection of basic survival tools, a physical reminder of the lesson from Kafera 12. The Horizon's mission would take them to worlds far more challenging than Kafera 12, with environments that would test both their technology and their ingenuity. But Rhea felt prepared in a way that went beyond her formal training. She had learned perhaps the most important lesson of all, that true resilience comes not from relying solely on either tradition or innovation, but from understanding when and how to apply each. On the day of departure, as the Horizon prepared to leave orbit, Rhea stood at a viewport, watching her home planet grow smaller. Earth, where ancient knowledge and cutting-edge science had learned to coexist out of necessity, had prepared her for this journey in ways she was only beginning to appreciate. Commander Lyra, the Horizon's executive officer, joined her at the viewport. "First deep space assignment, Specialist Miller?" "Yes, Commander." "Nervous?" Rhea considered the question. "Respectful of the challenge," she answered carefully, "but confident in our preparation." Commander Lyra nodded approvingly. "I read the report from your Kafera 12 exercise. Impressive adaptability. That's exactly what we need out here on the frontier. Technology can fail us, but resourcefulness never does." As the Horizon engaged its faster-than-light drive and the stars blurred around them, Rhea thought about the journey ahead. They would encounter alien worlds with conditions no one had anticipated, face challenges no simulation could predict. But they would face them with both the power of advanced technology and the wisdom of fundamental principles. the perfect integration of old and new. And when others might see only limitations, Rhea would see possibilities. In a handful of sand, in a piece of charcoal, in the knowledge passed down through generations. Because sometimes, survival depended not on the most advanced solution, but on remembering the most enduring ones. The lesson of Kefera 12 had transformed not just Rhea's career, but the perspective of an entire graduating class of galactic officers. As they scattered across the stars on their various assignments, they carried with them a newfound respect for the fundamentals, and for the quiet cadet from Earth who had reminded them that progress doesn't always mean abandoning the past. On worlds throughout the Galactic Alliance, new officers would find themselves in challenging situations where their technology failed them. And in those moments, many would think back to the story they'd heard about Kefera 12, about rocks and sand and charcoal, and about the power of simple solutions to complex problems. And somewhere in the vastness of space, aboard the research vessel Horizon, Specialist Rhea Miller would be continuing to bridge those worlds, the ancient and the futuristic, the simple and the complex, finding balance where others saw only opposition, and harmony where others heard only discord. The twin sons of Kefera 12 continued their eternal dance across the lilac sky, indifferent to the brief visit of the alien cadets. But the lessons learned under their harsh light would travel far beyond that lonely world, rippling outward through the Galactic Alliance like water through a perfectly designed filter, clear, life-sustaining, and essential. 3 years into the Horizon's mission, Rhea found herself leading a landing party on Proxima Centauri b, a potentially habitable world with atmospheric conditions far more challenging than Kefera 12. The team included Silith, who had also been assigned to the research vessel, and 4 other specialists. As they conducted their initial survey, a sudden geomagnetic storm disabled their filtration equipment, leaving them with potentially toxic local water and no technological means to purify it. Without hesitation, the team fell back on the Miller Protocol, constructing natural filtration systems enhanced by their scientific knowledge of the local environment. When the rescue team arrived 3 days later, they found not a group in distress, but a functioning camp with adequate water, temporary shelter, and even a rudimentary communication system fashioned from repurposed equipment parts. The incident became another case study at the Academy, reinforcing the curriculum changes that had begun with the Kefera 12 experience. Soon, every cadet was required to demonstrate proficiency in both technological and non-technological survival methods before graduation. What had started as one cadet's seemingly outdated approach had evolved into a fundamental shift in how the Galactic Alliance prepared its officers for the unpredictable challenges of space exploration. And at the center of this shift was a simple yet profound understanding that true innovation lies not in abandoning traditional knowledge, but in finding new ways to honor and integrate it. As the years passed, Rhea's career took her from specialist to instructor, from explorer to mentor. She watched with satisfaction as each new generation of cadets embraced the balanced approach she had championed, carrying it forward to distant stars and unknown worlds. And on particularly challenging days, she would sometimes take out the miniature filtration model Reiser had given her at graduation, running her fingers over its simple components: rocks, sand, charcoal, and leaves, remembering how sometimes the most powerful solutions are also the most humble. In the vast and complex universe, with all its technological marvels and scientific wonders, there remained an enduring truth that Rhea had known since her childhood in the reclaimed zones of Earth: that wisdom often lies not in complexity, but in simplicity, not in dismissing the past, but in carrying its lessons forward into the future. And so, the legacy of Kefera 12 lived on, in training manuals and field protocols, in emergency kits and survival courses, but most importantly, in the mindset of a new generation of explorers who understood that true resilience comes from balance, and that sometimes the oldest solutions are also the most enduring.